That dishes sound back here gave me like a flashback to when I was 16 and I worked at a ice cream parlor, and I was bussing tables, okay, and the place was packed. It was like a Friday night. The place was packed, and I was bussing the tables, and I had this cart with like 3 levels on it, right? And you would go and you would bust the table, and you would like pick up all the glasses and put them in the bin, and then when the cart was full, you'd go and take it back, and they would wash the dishes, you know? And my cart was full. I mean, it was like full. But I saw one last table on the other side of the room. And I was like, oh, you know what? I'm just going to go bust that one last table, and then I'll go back to the dishwasher. So anyway, so I went and I like zigzagged through all these people, got to this one table, put my cart there, turned and to get the things off the table, and all of a sudden out of the corner of my eye, I see the whole cart like shifting. And there were like those big like sundae glasses and things, like on the top, and just crashing down, like the whole thing just crashed on the floor. It was a huge, like it was something out of a movie, I swear. It was this huge crash, and this big place that on a Friday night was like jumping and like conversation, like it was very, very loud, was silent. Like silent, and everybody was looking at me. Like usually like somebody claps, everybody felt so terrible that nobody even wanted to clap. And I looked at the owner, and the owner was like this old surly, like ex-Navy dude, and he had like tattoos on both of his arms, and he was about to like swear up a storm right in front of all of his customers. And one of the waiters stoops down, and he picks up a wheel off the ground, and he goes, huh, loose wheel. One of the wheels had fallen loose from the cart. Those 3 words saved my life in that moment. He goes, huh, loose wheel. So now whenever I hear dishes crashing, I'm like, oh no, I'm back there now. I'm back there again. The dishes are crashing down. No, but anyway, it's thank you for bearing with me in my stories. My name is Michael Jackson. Yes, feel free to say whatever you want. I've heard it all before. Actually, somebody told me a new one the other day. But anyway, I'll spare you. So I am here from California. I got to say, I love visiting New York City. Love visiting New York City. It's probably my favorite place to visit here in these continental United States. I wonder sometimes if people who live here know how cool it is. There's like the people, the food, the culture. I mean, it's just everything. It's so cool about New York City. In fact, I brought my wife here last year for Christmas. I live in Carlsbad, California, with my wife and 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls. The oldest is 11. The youngest is 2. So we are quite a full house. Obviously, the one who's 2 is the boss right now. If any of you know who've had a 2-year-old, that's how it works. Okay, so I train on React, and I work on React code professionally. Actually, I loved it so much I quit my job and I made it my job. And so I am half of a company called React Training. My business partner is Ryan Florence. Ryan was here just a couple months ago, actually, at the meetup that y'all had at Shopify, or not Shopify, it was Spotify. That's what happens when all the companies change their names to Ify, Opify. Anyways, Spotify. Anyway, so he and I were React Training, and we basically do training full time, and then we work on open source code in the other time that we get. So the workshops that we do kind of fund the training that we do. I'm in New York actually this week doing a training workshop with WeWork, and so if you're interested in any React training, we'd love to come and talk to you. Chances are, if you're doing React, you're probably using something that we built. So we'd be happy to come and teach you about it and tell you how to use it. Okay, so that's a little bit about me. And I just thought, so tonight I wanted to talk a little bit about, let me close this here. I wanted to talk about what it means to be like declarative, okay? And what it means, when somebody says that React is declarative, and what does that give us? What power does it give us? And why is that cool? And hopefully, we can have some sort of, back and forth. This is just, this is a meetup. So I want to just kind of throw some ideas out there and see if they stick, and we'd love to get your feedback on them as well. I think I may have, how many people here saw the talk that I did a couple months ago about render props? Okay. How many people hated that talk and hated me for giving that talk? Oh, feel free. It's OK. It's fine. It kind of rustled some feathers. We're going to be using some render props tonight. So if it makes you really mad, just cover your eyes or something, or close your ears. OK, so let's talk. But before we talk about the declarative stuff, I think it's useful to just kind of backstep one step and just say, OK, so how did we used to do stuff? How did we used to write apps before we started using React? And then we can contrast that with the way that we currently write stuff, because I think that's really helpful to see where we came from in order to understand why what we have is so cool. So here's our old friend. Yeah. How many people thought they were going to come to a React meetup in 2017, and that was the first line of code they were going to see, right? What is this guy? He's crazy. OK, so remember this? You'd like prefix your variables with the $sign. So let's make a little app here. Let's put an H1. So I'm going to have a list of sporting goods. And we'll put an OL in there, and we'll append that to the document body. OK? Let's see. Let me save this, and then I'll go back here and make sure that it's actually working. OK. I'm going to put this over here on the right. I'll put this over here on the left, so you can see them both at the same time. OK. All right. So let's say that we've got a list of inventory products, basically, in our store. Maybe I've got a baseball bat. Maybe I've got a basketball. Any Knicks fans in here? No? Not one? It's OK. Don't be shy. Yeah, OK. Yeah. That was a pretty crazy game the other night. So let's see. And we've got a tennis racket. OK. And so if we wanted to put all of these things, we wanted to show a list of the inventory in our store, we might do something like go ahead and grab that OL. And then, so I might do something like inventory.for each item. And then go and grab my OL and say, hey, just append a new list item. Guarantee you weren't using backticks the last time you were using jQuery. OK, so there we go. So that will put everything in our list. OK. Man, I'm so productive with jQuery. Why did I ever leave it? This is great. OK, so we've got the app up here already. We've got our list going. And now let's maybe let's put in like a form. So app append. Let's append a. We'll have a form here. And we'll have an input in the form, and it will be, I don't know, the new item. So we'll just call that, give it a name of item. And then when we submit that form, you weren't using arrow functions either. OK, so when we submit that form, here we're going to get an event object, and we'll just prevent default on that. And so basically what we're going to do is we're going to use this form to add something new to the list. OK, let's say grab the values. I'm going to serialize the form. Let me go in and pull in my serialized form library. OK, so I'm going to serialize the form. I'm going to grab out that value, and let's just log it right now, values.item. And let's see if we can get that to log out. Let's move this to the, sorry, wrong one. Let's move it to the bottom. Okay, so if I wanted to add like a bowling ball, okay, so we'll get that here. One other thing that we're going to do is I'm going to clear the form, event.target.reset. Okay. So if I were going to add this item to the list, right? It's one thing to render a static list. If I'm going to add this item to the list, you might think, okay, well, we've got a list of inventory. Why don't you just inventory.push that item? Right? Inventory.push that item. And then we'll just go and put, all of the inventory in the list. So let's see, I've got a bowling ball. Oh, I forgot. Right? So essentially what I need to do is first I need to go and remove the stuff that already exists in the list. So I'll say inventory dot, I don't even remember. Is there something for empty it? Let's see. Let's roll the jQuery dice and see. Bowling ball. No, okay, that's not a thing. Oh, I could HTML it. Yeah. There we go. Oh, come on, you did this. You know you did this. Be like, no, I never did that. That is beneath me. Inventory.html is not a function?
It's the array. It's array. That's it. Oh, I also need to do it on the OL.
Oh, I need to do it on the A. Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. People are like, this guy, how long do we have to stay here? Okay, all right, I'm going to try one more time. Woo! Thank you. That is my talk, and we never should have left jQuery. Thank you. I'll be around all week. Right. So what happened here, and what's going on here, right? There's kind of a little bit of there's a little bit of time involved here, right? And I kind of introduced that little bug on purpose, right? But I have to think, okay, so have I rendered this list before? And if I have, then I should probably empty it out before I go and just reappend all of these items, right? This is probably also the least possible efficient way to do this, right? Some of you are thinking, why don't you just put one new item in the list, right? Well, in that case, now I have to worry about, well, is there a list in the page at all? What work have I already done? Because now I need to do some more work. So what work has already been done for me? Has this, for example, this append already been done is what I'm asking, right? So I've got this very sort of imperative way, right? And this is how we used to do things is we used to think very, very imperatively about building our apps. And we would go and grab an object or grab some piece of DOM, and then we would go and call methods on it and say, okay, now I've got the div, now go empty it. Now I've got the div, now append this and append that whole thing to the body. Now I've got some items and append them to the list, right? So this is kind of how we used to do things. This is how we used to think about building apps. Let's rebuild this app. Let's just rebuild this app with React, okay? Oh yeah, I've got import statements now. None of that require CommonJS garbage. Here we go. Okay, so if I had let's see, I'll call it a, oh no, I'm gonna use a pure function. No, I'm not. I'm gonna use an app extends react.component. Oi. Okay, got my render function here. I just want to grab some of this HTML because I don't have to type out all that stuff again. Return that, a div. We'll put the form in there. What else do we have? We basically had the h1, basically had these things right here. There we go. We'll close this here. Okay. All right, so let's get React DOM too. Okay, so React DOM.render my app. into, I'll just get an element out of the page. App. I could have just put it in the body too, but then React complains. So let's say the starting state here is going to be the inventory. I think we still have that variable hanging around somewhere up here. Just grab that real quick. We'll put it down here. Actually, I'll just put it right in line. OK. And now I could say, something like that. I'll say, let's see. So this .state.inventory.map. We'll have an item here. And then we'll say something like, what did we say we were going to do? Oh, yeah, we're just going to put them all in a bunch of list items. So then we'll have item, key. We could just use item for that for now. All right. Whew. All right. Rewriting stuff with React. All right. So now, so first of all, I want you to notice something, right? Where are the append calls? Nowhere, right? Like you could say that we've got some imperative code here, which was render the app, right? But if you've been using React, you'll know that actually that call is idempotent, which means like if you call it twice with the exact same element class and the exact same node, well, it's just going to update the one that exists there already instead of like re-rendering the whole thing. So even that's kind of safe as far as imperative stuff goes. But then we don't have any real like append calls here or remove calls. Let's see what happens. So let's set up an onSubmit handler here on the form. OK. And I'm actually going to reuse a lot of this stuff. So I'm going to just copy all this stuff. Handle submit is going to be an event handler. OK. Prevent default there. Get all of the values. So this is going to be, instead of just an inventory.push, we're going to say this.setState with the inventory is going, the new inventory basically, I'll just use a state callback here. I always get a little uncomfortable whenever I'm like setting state based on previous state and I'm not using the callback form. So I'll just say state.inventory.concat with this new item, right? So so values.item. OK, so gone is the push. And then what happens to all of this sort of imperative code as well? Just kind of disappears, right? We know from working with React that these appends and the whole like, OK, we need to reset the existing HTML that's there. We know that stuff just kind of goes away. OK, does anybody see an error in my code? Let's see if it works. Oh, geez, serialized form is not defined. You're all fired. Import serialized form from form serialize. That's not confusing. All right, let's try this again. Bowling ball, go. Yes. OK, so so we've lost all of the append calls, right? All of the like, here, go and do this now to the element. Go and append this. Go and empty it. Empty out the other items. OK, now put in the new ones. All of that code, we left it behind when we moved to React. We now no longer have this imperative model where we're grabbing elements and we tell the browser what to do with those elements. We now just say, the page looks like this. Okay, given my current state, given what I know about the state of the world, this is what the page looks like. And React, it's your job to make it so, to make it happen, right? And we hope that it's efficient at doing what it does, but honestly, that's not even our job anymore. We just tell React what the DOM should look like. Okay, so this is what I mean by declarative programming. And instead of going to the elements and manipulating them and manipulating their contents, I just declare what the contents are or what the contents should be, and then I let React do the actual updating of the page, right? And so sometimes I compare this to kind of like cruise control for your car, right? Like cruise control is, is the declarative interface. I want to go 80 miles an hour. Go. I don't have to push up and down on the gas to tell my car to go 80 miles an hour, right? I just declare it once and it's done. So given the fact that React gives us this nice declarative model for the DOM, could we use that same declarative model in other places, like in our own APIs, for example, in the code that we write? Okay. So let me show you another example. So what if we had an app here? I'm going to get rid of our little sporting goods app real quick. Let's see. So if I had an app here that was basically like, as soon as component did mount fires, I'm going to track basically the geolocation, okay, of my app. Okay. So I'm going to say, what is it? What is the API? Navigator.geolocation.watch position. And then I'll just say position.
You got a typo in geolocation.
Thank you. Some people saw that typo and they're like, I can't wait until his code blows up. You, sir, were very kind. You were like, there's a typo there. Thank you. OK, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to watch the position and then just console.log it. Let's see if that even works. OK, so I got my position here. I got my coordinates. Good. Let me set. How about I'll keep some state around, and I'll call it lat, and that's null, and I'll call it long, and that's null. And then whenever my position changes, I'll say this.set state. Lat is going to be position.chords. I think it calls it latitude. Latitude. Long is going to be position.chords.longitude. English. I don't know how anybody learns it. OK, latitude and longitude. All right, so let's see that. And then basically, let's come back here and let's say your position is this.state.lat or and then this.state.long or some dots. Let's see. OK, cool, right? So this is, you could say, well, that's, this is kind of an imperative API, right? Just like, append, which, jQuery's append is obviously just, sugar for like append child, right? Or remove child or whatever. That HTML function was just sugar for inner HTML equals, right? So that was, those were imperative sort of operations that we're doing. Well, here we've got another imperative operation, right? I'm calling this watch position API. And you might say, OK, well, so how would you share this with somebody else who's on your team? Right? Think about this. What if I had, so this is some behavior essentially, which is watch the location, watch the position. And then somebody else says, hey, Michael, I saw you built that cool app that where I was, I could watch the position of somebody walking around. I need to do that in my app too. Can you share that code with me? At which point I would have to say something like, yeah, sure, no problem. All you got to do is say navigator.geolocation.watchPosition, and then as the position changes, then you can set the state. Oh, and by the way, you're going to need some state. Right? So basically, everything that's up here is boilerplate, right? So it's boilerplate, which means I should have a good way to share it. And it's also kind of like imperative code that's going on, right? So I think some of you might know what's coming. What if we took all of this stuff and we just put it in a geoposition component? And we'll just copy and paste all that stuff up there. And what does a geoposition component render? Well, we could just tell it what to render. Like I could render a geoposition component here. And I could give it a render prop. We'll get back some state. Okay, so now instead of living in my local state, this stuff lives in the state of a component that I can use, right? So it returns this .props.render. If you've never seen this technique before, you probably want to go back and watch my render props talk that I gave in Phoenix a couple months ago. OK, so basically, all we're going to do is we're going to take this imperative API, OK, and we're going to create our own sort of declarative abstraction for it. OK, and all we're doing here is we're just following React's example. Right? React said, hey, there's a bunch of imperative DOM stuff. Append child, remove child, set attribute, add event listener. Right? All of that imperative stuff that you used to have to do when you were building your jQuery apps, we're going to do that stuff for you so you can just declare what the state of the world is. You can just declare what the UI looks like. And now what we're doing is we're following that example and we're saying, hey, you know what? There's more imperative API out there. There's stuff like this geolocation, watch position, right? That's an imperative API. I wish I had a declarative API to sort of paper over that, to sort of smooth that over. So it makes it shareable, but it also makes it, declarative. So I can look at this render method and I can see, aha, we are doing something with the geoposition here. Okay. What other kinds of things could we use this for? So I've actually got a I actually did this with, we built a component a while back called React Training, React Media. We did this with like media queries, right? So you render a, you render a media component, you give it a query, which is basically just like a CSS query string, right? What's the imperative API that we're glossing over here? Does anybody know? It's the match media API. Window.matchMedia. Any browser that ships with support for media queries in CSS also has an imperative JavaScript API called match media. You basically say window match media, and then you get this listener thing, and then you have to set up your functions on the listener, and then when they get called, then you set state, right? All of that stuff, all of that imperative code that I just mentioned, all of it's boilerplate if you want to use the match media stuff in your React app. So what we did is we said, OK, let's wrap it up into a media component. You just give it a query, and then we'll tell you when that value of those queries change. Okay, so in this case, we're using the children prop instead of a render prop. It's not named render, it's just named children, but it's the same kind of idea. Okay. One more example that I wanted to show, I think I've still got just a little bit of time, is the, where was it? So it was here. Let me see if I can get this working. So I have a little chat app here. Am I in the exercise here in the solution here? Come on. Don't fail me. Connection. Come on. There we go. Okay, that was me earlier at the. So I've got this little chat app. And Ryan is right now in Dallas. It was kind of funny because he was giving this same workshop in Dallas, and I was here in New York, and we were chatting back and forth for a while. So the people in Dallas are saying, "Hello, NYC." So we have this little chat app, right? And if you'll notice something about this chat app, it's fine, but it's also kind of a little annoying because it doesn't actually scroll for us. Right? So it's, when we think about it, that's like the scroll position. That's, in managing that, that's a very imperative process. Right? Could we make something like that declarative? Okay? That's another DOM thing that we have to do sometimes, right? In the DOM. So let's take a look at my chat component here real quick. So I've got some state here, which is just basically auth. So I auth when I log in. We just auth with GitHub. And then I've just got an array of these messages. And then as I get new messages, I set state with those. So that's basically all there is to that piece of it. So this messages array is just going to keep growing. And then in my render method, I pull them out of state. And then I group them using a reduce. Yeah. OK. No, it's actually way more complicated than it needs to be. And then I just map over those message groups and I display them here, right? So the thing that I'm using here to put them in is I'm just putting them in a div with class name messages, and that's my scroller. If I where did that come from? Oh, view source. Who views source these days? Lame. Yeah, exactly. Jared. No, I'm just teasing. View source is how I learned to program, darn it. OK, so let's see. I want to inspect this thing. Not really that thing, but it's parent, but it's too hard to. Come on, geez. Oh, this thing is way up. Golly. OK. That thing has got overflow auto. OK, so that's my scroller. That div with class equals messages. That's the thing that's providing the scroll behavior, right? Could I manage that scroll behavior with a component? Ah, thank you. Just don't say anything mean, please. Yes. OK. Could I manage that? Could I manage that scroll position with a component? What if instead of a div, what if I had something like append_to bottom? What is append to bottom? What does that even do? So let's make a component here called append_to bottom. And now remember, the goal of this is to make some imperative behavior declarative. Okay. You know what I should have done before my pin to bottom? Sorry, I'm rushing ahead just a little bit. Sorry. I'm going to leave this as a div for just 1 second, and I'm just going to do this in the component first. So maybe I could have like a ref on this thing. I could be like, the ref is the scroller. And then on component did update, basically what I can say is this.refs, I'll say the node is this.refs.scroller. OK, so that's how I get a reference to the node. And then I'll say node scroll top is node.scroll height. OK? OK, so here we go. So now when I say stuff, again, it scrolls. Problem solved, right? I mean, pretty much, right? Until somebody comes along and they say, indeed. No, it is not. So somebody comes along and says, hey, you know that auto-scrolling thing, that pin to bottom thing that you were doing? That was totally cool. Can I use that in my app too? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Just write this little bit of imperative code. At which point you say, no. Dude, we started using React like 6 months ago. Why are you still writing imperative code? You're bringing me down, right? I want a way to do that declaratively right here. And plus I got this ref, like that's ridiculous. Got this ref on things. I need a component to do this. Right? Okay, all right, fine. We'll give you a pin to bottom component. Get rid of the ref here. And we're going to basically just take this imperative code, we're going to tuck it away inside our pin to bottom. So what is a pin to bottom? A pin to bottom is a div, essentially. Right? It's replacing a div. So it is a div. We're going to pass along all of this stop props. We'll put our ref back here so we can get the node. This dot node, okay? So now I can share. It's shareable now. See? So if you want this pin to bottom behavior, what's he going to say? Oh, too long. Oh, all right. Hi. Okay, so the pin to bottom is shareable now, and it also communicates like some, kind of intent, right? Oh, I see what this is. It's not just like a div that scrolls. It's one of those things that's pinned to the bottom, right? Well, in this case, the pin to the bottom might not actually be what we want, right? What if I scroll back, say something else, and I'm like, oh, what did that one guy say? Oh, yes, this is very, very interesting. Please say something else. Oh, what? What? Oh, I totally lost the context. Let me try it again. I'm going to scroll back here. Somebody said something super, stop it. Right? Basically, after every single update now, I'm just thrown right to the bottom of the chat, right? Isn't that super lame? What would be nicer? Well, maybe a notification. Maybe what we could do is we could infer whether or not they wanted that behavior by how far down they were scrolled, right? So if I'm scrolled all the way down, you can infer he wants to see the latest messages. He wants us to automatically scroll the view, right? If I'm not, don't do that. I scrolled back for a reason, right? I wanted to go look at some older message in the chat, okay? That's what we're describing here is kind of a complex behavior. Wouldn't you say? Like, if I'm scrolled to the bottom, automatically scroll. If I'm scrolled back, don't scroll it. Let's try this here. So let's see. So instead of a pin to bottom, what I want is more like a completely non-descriptive name, like smart scroller. Like a smartphone. Like, what does that mean? I don't know. It's a smartphone. All right. Okay, so I've got a smart scroller here now. So how could we model this behavior? Basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put an on scroll on this thing. Okay, so I'm going to have a scroll handler handle the scroll. And what I basically want to say is, look, if they're scrolled all the way to the bottom, then don't automatically scroll. Otherwise, then automatically scroll. Otherwise, leave it. Okay, so I need to calculate. Let's see. I'll say scroll top, scroll height equals this dot node. I'll also get the offset height. Ooh, math. All right. So let's see. So let's say the distance to the bottom of the screen, or distance from the bottom, is going to be, so the scroll top is how many pixels are invisible above. So the scroll height is the total scrollable height of the thing. So it's going to be scroll height minus the scroll top plus the offset height. In other words, how many pixels do we have left to scroll before this thing is actually at the bottom? Scroll top plus the offset height. Okay? So I'm going to say I want to automatically scroll if the distance from the bottom is less than 10. So if they scrolled all the way down and they're within 10 pixels of the bottom, then we're going to automatically scroll, okay? Component did mount. We'll initialize that value to true. I'm actually going to take this code and I'm going to put it in a method called scroll to bottom, because I want to reuse it in both the component did mount And I'm going to reuse it in component.update, but only if this .autoscroll. Do you see what I'm saying? So here's where I'm making the decision, right? I'm saying, as they scroll, listen to that scrolling. Assuming I've done the math right. From bottom, there we go. So let's see. Let me bust out the console log here. OK, yeah, so it's big. OK, so it's small there. OK, good. OK, so this thing should automatically be scrolling when I'm already scrolled to the bottom. Otherwise, if I'm scrolled back up, don't auto scroll for me when you get an update. So if I'm down here, should scroll, otherwise not. Should now, not now. Kind of interesting, right? To think about, and that, I mean, that's a, thank you. That's a fairly complex behavior, right? That's a fairly complex imperative procedure, right? Doing the math, doing the scrolling, setting the scroll top, right? This is a complex imperative procedure, behavior, that we can now share because we just wrapped it up in a component and made it declarative. So if you want that same behavior, all you got to do is render a smart scroller, and you're good to go. I was stoked to see that Jared actually launched his React FNS project tonight, because that was something that this is something that we were talking about at dinner just like a month ago, where he's basically taken a bunch of these imperative APIs like geolocation, media queries, network stuff. It's a project that we've been working on as well. Ryan Florence did, he did a React Idle a couple months ago, React Network a couple months ago. Obviously, I've done React Media. So it's a problem that it's like, why are we still doing things imperatively, right? When we're in the browser, we should have learned from React by now. We should be doing things declaratively instead of imperatively. And so that is kind of the principle that I wanted to talk about. And thank you so much for having me. Two questions? OK.
Quick ones.
Yeah, quick one. Sorry, I went over. Yeah.
How would you handle only scrolling to the bottom if you're sending a message?
Yeah, so we could, we could I'll just tell you how I might handle that. So I know who I am here in the parent. I've got auth, right? And so I could do something like, hey, only scroll when, the auth is my auth.id or whatever, right? I could pass in a prop here and basically configure this thing this way and say, hey, there's a special ID that I don't want you to actually scroll on.
But then the scroller needs to know about the data.
Yeah, scroller needs to know about the data in that situation. Yep. So it would be like a message scroller or something like that, right? Yeah, another question.
So have you noticed any difference in the amount of code that you've got to write to extend these sorts of libraries when you want to? One thing I noticed when switching to React Router 4 was to get a lot of the custom behavior that I wanted, or that I got, and was able to just there used to be props
that you had.
Yeah. And then when I wanted to get that same behavior in React Router 4, when they dropped some of those things, I had to write a whole lot more extension.
Yeah.
Is that a quality of this kind of programming? And if so, is it worth it?
Yeah. So the question is, I went to React Router 4. The previous versions did stuff for me that version 4 doesn't. Is that in general the type of thing that I'm going to have to do when I go this route? And from what I can tell, yes. That's kind of how it goes, right? If previous to version 4, React Router was solving a lot more problems than we ever intended to solve. We had code in there for doing things like code splitting, which, and hot reloading. We had API and ways to manage that stuff when, React Router is not a tool for code splitting. React Router is not a tool for hot reloading your routes, It really is just a tool for updating the UI as the location changes. And so we reduced our scope a little bit and said we're just going to focus in on this one problem. We're just going to give you a couple of components. But like I said, like scrolling is a problem that you can totally solve with a component inside one of your routes, for example. So yeah, in general, yes, I think, and we could talk more about it later, but in general, yes, I would say giving components like smaller responsibilities means you probably have a few more components to actually deal with, means you may have to end up writing some more of your stuff. Good news, or some more of your own stuff. Good news is, whenever you get lower level bits, like you don't lose the ability to do higher level things. You can just put a bunch of them together in a component, and now you've got your higher level behavior again, which is exactly what we've done with, like it's kind of what Jared was doing with like the server-side routing stuff with React Router 4. We didn't take that away. It's a little more work now, but we didn't take that away. You can do the same thing with code splitting in React Router 4. So there's some trade-offs. Yeah, we have a smaller scope. We're solving fewer problems, but you can use composition to solve those other problems, which are honestly, everybody solves stuff in a different way anyway. Like scroll behavior is a very, very hard thing to generalize across all websites. Same thing with like transitions and animations and stuff. It's very, very hard to say everybody's going to do it like this. So it might be better left in user land anyway. All right, thank you very much. I'll be around if you have any questions.